Welcome everyone to CJU 2020. Stephen and I are so excited to have you here for today's discussion on diversification and 3 scalable strategies to implement on your programs.
A little more about us. So while collaborating on this session, Victoria and I realized we share an oddly amount of things in common. I'm sure you guys are familiar with, work spouses, work wife, work husband, but we are more like work twins. Besides our title and our tenure, we were both born the same year, and we both share a dairy allergy. To top it all off, we are super dedicated to Harry Potter, particularly the House of Ravenclaw. And as people who both reread the books this year, highly recommended. The content holds up even as an adult. Where we differ, besides the obvious, is really our areas of focus. So during my time at CJ, I've built a reputation growing clients' programs efficiently while helping brands really grow an e-commerce dominance.
And my focus has been growth through innovation, whether that's adding an exciting new publisher, facilitating advertiser-to-advertiser partnerships, or just outside of the box ways to accomplish goals. So now that you know a little more about us, we'd like to know a little more about you all. So we're going to display a poll, and if you could take the next 25 seconds or so to select the best option shown for the challenge most relevant to your program as it pertains to your diversification efforts. We'll then share the results with you so you can learn a little more about your peers as well.
And as mentioned earlier, we will be taking questions at the end of the session pending time, so feel free to drop those into the Q&A as the conversation goes on today.
Perfect. So we should be sharing the results with you all now, and it's really interesting. It looks pretty evenly split across a couple things, with capturing market share being the challenge most relevant to you guys. So looking at that competitive lens, it makes a lot of sense. That's not surprising to me. Stephen, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely in line with what I expected to see. And luckily, we're going to cover that directly, particularly in capturing market share with some content-focused publishers.
Perfect. So along with capturing market share, today we are going to focus on why diversification is so important in today's digital landscape. We will talk through tools to not only inform, but to also measure your strategy. We'll walk through our 3 strategies to diversify your program, and then we'll wrap with some effective talking points to address some of the key challenges that were referenced in the poll that you just saw.
Let's start with a remarkable real-world example of how diversification can transform your business. Silk, a leader in the plant-based dairy alternative space, as someone with an allergy, I'm very familiar. They did something remarkable a few years ago. They put their product that did not need to be refrigerated in the refrigerator section right next to the milk. For consumers, this was remarkable, and their sales tripled almost overnight. By moving their product, they were suddenly reaching shoppers they weren't before. Their healthy, organic, non-milk value proposition was front and center as customers were exploring and evaluating their options, particularly for milk. Nearly half of Americans in 2019 consider themselves non-dairy alternative drinkers, and that's a 65 increase over the last 5 years. So think to yourself and think if you have tried any of these non-dairy alternatives, whether that's oat milk, which is my personal favorite, soy milk, or almond milk. And now ask yourself if you would have tried that product if it was on the shelf next to, let's say, the powdered milk or the flour. Simply by moving their product, they were reaching a totally different market, net new customers, really incremental shoppers. And this didn't take much. They didn't have to reinvest, they didn't have to launch a new product or do anything really super advanced. All they had to do was diversify where they were reaching their customers and evolve with their shopper.
Applying this concept digitally, a recent Google study supports Silk's discovery of needing to be in front of the right consumer at the right time, but with the right value proposition. In the study, Google took a subset of consumers that claimed to be brand loyal and proved that on average, 67% of the time, they could be swayed, not only by a competitive brand, but a fictional one at that. This asserts the notion that it is exceptionally important to always have your value proposition in front of consumers and to not assume your consumers are always going to be loyal.
Google takes this concept a step further by really revamping the shopper journey. Customers have more choices than ever, and they tend to be super fluid with their touch points. A lot of affiliate programs really live in that purchase phase of the shopper funnel, when in reality, you should be spending the bulk of your time in what Google calls the messy middle, which is this infinite loop of exploration and evaluation in terms of touch points and how you're reaching your customers. This is where customers are spending the bulk of their time, and really where you should be concentrating your diversification efforts. As the shopper journey has evolved over time, so has the affiliate audience, so has publishers and their promotional models and what they're able to offer your business. So take a step back and think about all the different ways that you can live and breathe in this messy middle, and it's going to directly align with the strategies that we outlined today.
We now understand the value in diversification, but we need to consider how to get started. Start by using data to pinpoint who is driving value and opportunity for your brand and how to best scale their performance. Some tools to lean into include views of your holistic customer journey, understanding your audience profiles for both your brand and the publishers that you either work with or want to start working with, and benchmark your share of voice against competitors.
Once you've leveraged your data for direction on which partners and which opportunities to capitalize on, here are the 3 strategies to really ensure that you can scale your reach. 1, thinking about how to drive awareness and brand equity with influencing publishers. Number 2, thinking about how to scale your conversion drivers so you're not relying on the traditional typical models. And then finally, really exploring those advanced promotional methods not typically associated with affiliates, such as conquesting or on-site personalization. These 3 pillars will really help you achieve your goals, whether that's volume, more efficiency, or just general new customers, more traffic, that type of thing. So, expanding on how affiliate can really drive awareness and brand equity and help you capture market share, let's take a look at a success story where an advertiser leveraged affiliate as a complement to their earned media strategy to really drive that brand awareness. This particular advertiser has a highly competitive product, so they sought to really increase their share of voice and expand their digital footprint. So because of that, we really wanted to leverage some competitive comparison data to understand where we fit in the market and where to focus our attention. That really led to a 3-tiered approach where we looked at where we had the most dominant presence and how we can maintain that, where we looked at our current partners and where there's opportunity to capture market share from other competitors, so really scaling our partnership there. And then lastly, seeing where we were completely losing out on or where we didn't have a presence and really focus on increasing that. The results were really great, but it really proved out 3 other theories that is critical for you to take back internally. 1, that you can't solely rely on earned media to drive your brand awareness and to really drive that action and that conversion. Number 2, that oftentimes customers are starting their shopper journey on affiliate sites. They're not always, going straight from SEO. They are starting their shopper journeys on like more impulse buying publishers and things of that nature. And number 3, that content publishers are highly focused on prioritizing advertisers that are profitable for their business. So before you take this approach with a certain set of content publishers, think about that investment, think about how competitive your rates are, think about your value proposition to the customer as it differs from your competitors, and really promote that, because the more valuable you are to their business, the more they will prioritize your products and really push your goals.
Our second strategy focuses on conversion driving publishers. Diversifying and investing with conversion rate drivers is one of the most impactful ways to capture and retain market share in a crowded online space. We'll walk you through the actions to take in order to maximize growth. In my experience, conversion driving publishers are often major KPI drivers, but they're left on autopilot except for a select few. To maximize your growth potential, you need to empower untapped opportunities by understanding their unique value and creating a strategy accordingly. We want to start by sharing why you should care so much about these conversion driving publishers. First of all, they have a greater spend per order. 20% of consumers spend more than planned due to seeing an incentive offer. Additionally, despite the common misconception that conversion driving publishers are primarily leveraged by consumers that are already ready to make a purchase with your brand, they're actually a great way to capture new customers. 80% of consumers would visit a store they hadn't before if given a direct cashback offer. This confirms that the shoppers shopping with conversion rate drivers are not just your loyal customers, and you should leave no stone unturned when you're working with these publishers.
To maximize potential and scale, don't forget these key levers. Firstly, leverage elasticity data to really understand what commission has the greatest impact on your business. Don't forget competitive pressure. So think about if you have a highly competitive product, how your competitors rates, whether that's incentives to the customer or incentives to the publisher itself, how they impact how the publisher is prioritizing and promoting your business. Don't forget to diversify your incentives across the board. And those are incentives to the actual customer. So consider offering points, miles, and calls back, in addition to the standard cash back that you typically see. Also with COVID, we are seeing via our consumer data that they are preferring more buy options, pay options. So consider adding installment publishers or buy now, pay later publishers to really help diversify your conversion drivers across the board. Doing these things consistently will help you reduce concentration risks and your over-reliance on certain publisher groups.
So our third and final strategic bucket is advanced promotional methods. These models are more innovative and they differ from the more traditional publisher types that we see in affiliate. They're often the models that are the most exciting, but they can receive a lot of pushback internally, which is why we want to show you an example of an advertiser doing this successfully. So we want to take a look at a case study. This is a mature, large retail advertiser that went into 2020 with strong goals. They were top heavy, but they didn't want to diminish growth with their key partners. Rather, they wanted to diversify the mix. They wanted to test into new customer-focused opportunities to understand if they would move the needle. They began at the beginning of the year by bringing in installment or buy now, pay later publishers that Stephen just referenced. These publishers, like Stephen said, they've been huge over this year and have become even more valuable than they already were due to the COVID pandemic. Year to date for this case study, over 50% of the revenue driven was from net new customers coming out of these installment publishers. We then brought on an on-site personalization partner that shows relevant ads based on consumer behavior. This publisher was unique in model and also in their quick activation period that I know we all love to see, adding in a publisher and seeing them activate quickly. So they drove substantial revenue from the start. Their first month in program, they drove over $1 million, which is huge. Finally, we tested with an advanced conquesting model that takes consumers ready to make a purchase on Amazon, who in this case is a direct competitor, and instead it drives the consumer to the advertiser's website. So this is true incremental revenue for each sale gained. And we saw outstanding success again in our first month of testing with this partner and plan to continue iterating off of this. Implementing these publishers successfully led to not only revenue growth and new customer growth, which were two of their main goals going into the year, but most importantly, it spread the focus away from a few top publishers driving the lion's share of the KPIs.
Now that we've explored each strategy individually, let's take a look at what happens when an advertiser takes a holistic diversification effort by implementing all three strategies at once. You're probably looking at the graphic to the right thinking, wow, this is my program. A lot of programs from our experience are very top heavy. In this case, 90% of the program revenue was coming from 3 publishers. This was a huge red flag for me. So we really sought out to reduce that concentration while not sacrificing volume nor growth with the top 3 partners. To achieve this, we implemented the 3 diversification strategies we just talked about. For our influencing publishers, we focused on impulse purchase pubs and TM Plus style campaigns. To scale our conversion drivers, we really looked at our mid-tier loyalty group to ensure that they were on parity with the top loyalty partners, ensuring that we're giving them the same amount of increases and reaching those customers in a separate segment. And then finally, for our advanced model, we really focused on new customer driving. So targeted campaigns across dynamic publisher partners that really helped drive that overall KPI. This program now really lives in that messy middle that we talked about earlier, and it still has more room to evolve and scale. Your program can look like this versus the previous graphic, where you are implementing strategies that we discussed today that really overall captures your market share and diversifies your mix and really extending your reach across the board with incremental customers and existing customers as well.
We know half the battle of diversifying is changing internal perception of what affiliate can do. From our experience, here are some effective talking points to help combat common objections. First, focus on the incremental value of the channel. If you're capturing lifetime value or new to file data, that's great, and I would lean into that. If not, focus on the increased average order value and the robust audience that you can reach through affiliate.
Number 2, really think about the high return on ad spend. Really highlight those savings internally and consider reinvesting that in new low risk opportunities that you can only get through affiliate.
Affiliate is typically high return on ad spend, so make sure that you, focus on how you can capture market share. Build out your benchmark competitive reporting and share of voice reporting and use these measures to encourage conquesting opportunities. And this is essentially very key based on the poll that we saw earlier with conquesting market share being some of the biggest things you all are focused on. This tip is something I would 100% take internally and focus on.
And last but not least, always let the data speak for itself. So use the data to really validate your strategy. Lean on that insight to drive your strategic direction. This really allows you to focus on the value of each pillar that we discussed today. So the value of influencing publishers with capturing market share or driving new customers, the value of advanced targeting, from a conquesting standpoint. It allows you to lean on the KPIs and talk about the good results, and really, again, let the data speak for itself. So with that, really wanted to thank you guys for attending today. As promised earlier, we will be taking questions. So we will do that right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen and Victoria. Now, while you both were presenting, we did have a few questions come through from the audience, with the first one being, should I focus more on recruitment or existing publisher relationships?
You should consider recruitment as just a first step. So think about recruitment in the same capacity as activating. Quality versus quantity. Really consider the partners that have the ability to scale and focus your efforts there versus a vast number, of new publishers that don't have the capacity to really drive your goals.
Great. The next question we have, how do you decide when to diversify into mid-tier and content partners when you have aggressive revenue goals and the top publishers drive the bulk of program revenue? And I feel like that's something that we often hear.
Yeah, definitely hear that a lot. I think the focus is, again, on looking at the audience that you can bring in through content publishers, coupon and deal, etc. Looking at each publisher vertical and valuing them for what they can bring to the table for your program. Even with with strong revenue goals, content can bring in quite a bit. If you have a full program team, we can look at the holistic customer journey through our ACJ reporting. And I think that's a great place to start to inform your strategy and show that even content publishers that, like mentioned in the question, are often thought of as maybe not the ones that are converting and going to help you with your revenue goals. In fact, they often are informing the publishers that are getting those closers or the conversion drivers that we spoke of in this presentation. So I would have that be part of your holistic strategy from the get-go.
Great. And our last question, which publisher types do you think would essentially help conquesting on Amazon?
Go ahead,
you want to go
Stephen.
ahead? I think it's most commonly from the toolbar style publishers, which I think oftentimes gets a bad reputation, but they typically have the capabilities to do that overlay on Amazon. I feel like a few of them do it on like competitor sites that they don't work with. So sometimes it's valuable to, have those conversations with your toolbar publishers to look at their advanced sort of targeting capabilities along with their given value prop of, converting people in cart.
Yeah, I would agree with the toolbar focus and some those more advanced models having options for that. I would also say if Amazon is one of your direct competitors and you're looking to steal market share from there, I would also look at product focused publishers that can highlight like best of web pricing or any specific products that you have that would be competitive with what you can find on Amazon. And I also would say even content publishers. We've seen that a lot this year with Amazon honestly scaling back a little bit with who they're working with in the affiliate channel as a whole. There's been some gaps and abilities for their competition or competitors to be able to come in and work with some of these more content publishers that are talking about whether it be like product reviews or things like that consumers are looking for before purchasing on Amazon. So that would be another avenue I would explore.